Stress management for the working parent during the pandemic and beyond. Welcome. I am Angie Harris. I'm a certified mindfulness instructor, and I'm going to be facilitating the workshop this evening. This workshop is really going to give you solid practices on what to do when stress is felt in a major way. So many of us can feel stress in a lot of different ways, and we'll talk about some different things that are happening globally and locally to really make us feel anger, frustration, sadness, grief, guilt, shame, fear, all of these big things that are happening. But first, we'll just get to what this mindfulness thing is. So I'm a mom, I'm an author, a children's book author, and a certified mindfulness instructor for 20 years. 10 years I've been teaching. I'm a 20-plus year practitioner, and I have an interesting story that brought me to mindfulness. It was a tragedy-ridden story. So many of us are brought to mindfulness from a place of stress, not from a place of Zen. But 20 years after that tragedy, I'm still practicing. And one of the major reasons why I'm still practicing is because I realize that I can't fully show up in my own role as a mom and as a business owner, as a teacher, as a friend, as an aunt, as a wife. I can't fully show up in those roles if I don't have the ability to breathe, take a pause, and manage my emotions as I'm going through my daily activities. And we'll talk about how specifically mindfulness helps with that in tonight's workshop. What mindfulness is. It's become a pretty big buzzword over the last, I'd say, about 5-6 years. But when I was taught mindfulness 20 years ago, it wasn't called mindfulness. That was a word that I had just heard of. And when I read what it was, I thought, oh, I've been doing this for a long time. I called it meditation before. Now it's called mindfulness. And mindfulness is a type of meditation. Mindfulness is a type of contemplative practice. So if you have an umbrella and on the umbrella it says contemplative practice, mindfulness would be one of those things along with meditation, yoga, some say gardening, Tai Chi, more contemplative practices. But mindfulness is within contemplative practice. So mindfulness is not a cure for everything on the planet, but it's a heck of a starting point. That's a little joke that I like to make because sometimes people come to me and ask me to fix their marriage if I teach them mindfulness. Well, I'd like to say that that's what I do. However, mindfulness is about staying present in the moment and witnessing what's here no matter what. So if I can help someone manage their emotions, certainly being a more effective communicator can lead to a relationship fix or to progress within a business partnership. Certainly with children, one of the main people that I speak to are parents that are struggling with how to communicate and bond with their children. And when we enter the teen years as a child, how to really kind of go through all of those changes that children are experiencing and still maintain this connection as a parent, as someone that's guiding them through their life when we're freaking out as a parent because we have no idea what to do and how to answer some of those questions. So mindfulness can help with these things, but what it is paying attention in a special way on purpose with a sense of curiosity and kindness. And we're going to do a practice that I'm going to make as easy as possible in a little bit, but paying attention in a special way on purpose. Another way we can explain mindfulness, this is from Vinnie Ferraro out of California, one of my teachers, is getting curious with how my inside world interacts with my outside world with a sense of kindness and curiosity. So right now, as you're listening to my words, as you're looking at the screen, as you're hearing different things in your environment, as well as hearing my words, check in and get curious with what you're experiencing. Breathe as you're doing it, breathing in through your nose like you're smelling something. Smell the air. It's a different type of breathing. And listen to my words. Watch the screen. Look at something that's in your environment as if you hadn't seen it before. Notice what's happening on your inside world as it notices what's happening in the outside world. That's mindfulness. What mindfulness is not, this might help to frame if even you're still a little iffy on what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is not a disciplinary tactic. As parents, we want to say to our children, go calm down, go practice mindfulness. I strongly suggest you do not. It's not a punishment. It's not a punitive a disciplinary tactic at all. It's not only calmness and happiness. So one of the things that we notice when we start to practice mindfulness is our feelings sometimes aren't pleasant. They're unpleasant. Anger feels unpleasant. Anger sometimes feels like an absolute fire burning in our belly or our chest. Stress, and I'll talk about worry stress. Worry sometimes feels like a tightness right around the sternum right here. And when I check in with what's happening on the inside, as it notices what's happening on the outside, that's practicing mindfulness, I might notice that it's unpleasant in here. So guess what I do? I shut it off. I disconnect from the present moment and I go back into mind story because what I just felt didn't feel pleasant. That's mindfulness practice. It's not always calmness and happiness because sometimes what I notice actually doesn't feel that great. But when I start to pay attention to the pleasant and the unpleasant, I'm able to manage them better. I'm going to say that one more time because that's really important and that's really kind of the magic in the practice. When I stop being fearful of noticing what's happening on my inside world, even when it feels unpleasant, I'm able to manage it better. Because what tends to happen is I disconnect it from the bully in the brain, from the stress story of the mind. I disconnect the strong physical sensation from the story, and then I can skillfully redirect it to something else that's happening in the present moment, like my breath, like breathing in and squeezing my hands. Do it with me now. Breathe in, clench your fists. Breathe out and release them. Just there, we can skillfully redirect that bully in the brain, that mind story. And when I do that, I'll get into this a little bit later on in the workshop, but when I do that, I disrupt the negative reinforcement to a stress reaction. I disrupt that habit, that pattern, and I have real transformation in my life. So this happens when people overeat due to stress, when we overindulge, drugs, alcohol, pills. Pharmaceutical companies are pretty happy about what's happening right now because they have a whole new group of customers, a whole group of folks that have just been sheltered in place for 4 or 5 months in their home. And what are we going to do with our time? I joke with my husband as we drive around on recycling day. The cans and the bottles are overflowing out of those blue recycling bins in a way that they haven't been before. No judgment on my neighbors, no judgment, but I haven't seen it like that where it's actually overflowing like it's Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve or something every Tuesday. So mindfulness actually has us disrupt those patterns of feel stress, need to make it feel better. What can I do to make it feel better? I can eat a cookie. I could drink something. I can pop something. I can smoke something. I could bite something. This also applies to when a child does something that we don't like or that disrupts us or causes some type of a stress response in us. Child throws a tantrum. Adult has the urge to yell. Adult yells. You've just created a habit. So when parents want to yell less, we have to break the habit. Mindfulness practice helps with that because what I ask you to do is see child doing something that you don't like. It's not a safety issue. They're not stabbing their sister with scissors. This is just something that you don't like wearing their shoes in the house. Before you go right to the yelling response, the yelling reaction, take a breath, breathe in, breathe out, notice what's happening on your inside world as you notice your outside world, and we disrupt that response. We disrupt it, make a new habit, create a transformation by replacing it with a pause, a breath, squeeze the hands, breathe in, exhale, breathe out. And if I do that a few times, usually about 7 or 8 times over the course of a couple of days, I've disrupted my response of yelling. I've created a new habit. It's not magic. It's just the way we work. It's just knowing how this meat suit, this brain is. That's what mindfulness does. Some people call mindfulness a mind hack. It's so much more than that for me. This has been a lifeline for the last 2 decades. I don't want to diminish it by calling it a mind hack. However, if that's what makes you feel good about what this practice does, call it a mind hack Because really what we're doing is we're taking old habitual patterns and we're disrupting them and replacing them with something that not just serves our today and our immediate moment, like a cigarette, a beer, a pill. It serves the immediate moment to make us feel better, but it actually creates a decent amount of problems moving forward, right? Yelling creates a decent amount of problems moving forward for ourselves, for our children. But we disrupt it and replace it with something positive that actually creates connection to self, connection to mind, body, spirit, mind, emotion, and physical sensation, creates connection to the outside world with relationship with your child, with coworkers. You're now viewed as someone that can communicate even in the face of adversity. And really, it's not any extensive training that you've done academically. It's extensive training that we're doing all the time within ourselves. So that's why mindfulness has kind of been penned as a silver bullet for everything that ails. Because someone that can manage their emotions looks like they're a magician, right? It's almost like they have this dog-like quality that no matter what comes at them, like a puppy, they just lay on their little pillow and bake in the sun, like dogs do. No matter what the day has given, the dog still acts exactly the same. Not quite the same for us as humans. But when we can manage our emotions, we are revered and really looked at as a leader. And that's why mindfulness is being brought into a corporate world in the way that it is. Mindfulness is absolutely not the absence of thought. Mindfulness is actually marrying thought and physical sensation and emotion. So I'm noticing that every thought has an associated emotion, and every emotion has an associated physical sensation. I'll say that one more time because that's another important one. Every thought has an associated emotion, and every emotion has an associated physical sensation. And they happen so quickly that we tend to not notice them, which is why habits are formed and it's hard to break them. It seems like it's hard to break them because the thought comes in, I'm hungry, and before I know it, I'm already in my pantry and I've already consumed 3 cookies. I don't even know how I got to the kitchen. I don't even know how I got there. I had a thought that I was hungry, right? And before I knew it, I was in my pantry and 3 cookies were already not even chewed. They were just swallowed and down in my stomach. So this is where mindfulness helps. I become aware of my thought. The thought is, I'm hungry. I check in and notice what's happening as physical sensation when I have that thought. So I pause. I take notice. Okay, my heartbeat is a little fast. My stomach doesn't feel like hunger as much as it feels like nervousness. This is a big one. This is why people overeat all of the time and why overeating tends to be something that we go to when we're stressed. Because at some point, calories were for making us feel good and for strength, way back in our evolution. We ate calories to get muscle tone, to feel good. We didn't eat calories because we just really enjoyed Toll House Chips Ahoy cookies. We ate calories specifically for survival. So it's hardwired on us that when I feel stress, calories are going to make me feel better. Things are different in 2020. We've taken that to a whole new level where we just ingest calories, but we can break that habit, which is really an amazing thing, simply by noticing I had a thought that I was hungry. I checked in with physical sensation. I actually noticed that it wasn't hunger that my stomach was experiencing. It was nervousness. Let me breathe in. Let me put my hands on my belly, take a breath. This happens in a matter of moments, by the way. No time has even been expended. This is maybe 10 seconds. Breathe out. The urge to go and get those cookies is actually gone. And now I'm realizing that it's nervousness about, and then the story will continue, and then we can choose to manage that in a different way. And mindfulness is not religion. So mindfulness is certainly linked to spiritual practice and some religious practices because it's based in love, compassion, and empathy. So the same way that I wouldn't say that love is equal to religion, compassion is equal to religion, is the same way that I wouldn't say that mindfulness is equal to religion. Mindfulness is a natural human capacity, like logic and like reasoning. And when I practice mindfulness, these awesome things happen. So it has been linked to spiritual practice. However, mindfulness is a natural human capacity of the human being. Benefits of practice: attention, emotional regulation, we talked about that one, calming, compassion, adaptability, and resilience. So for the purposes of our global pandemic and the racial tensions that have been erupting over the last, many, many years, but that we're seeing right in front of our faces over the last 4 months, the adaptability and the resilience are two things that I'll just speak on just a little bit. Mindfulness practice actually has me aware of my thoughts and how they're connected to my emotions and how they're connected to my physical sensations. So the amazing thing that starts to happen is I realize that it's not so much a whole group of people that I'm fearful of, but it's a deep-rooted fear of me not having enough. This has been a big one politically, right? If I feel fearful and someone tells me that it's a group of people or a country or a place that is the symbol of my fear, am I, without mindfulness practice, without awareness, am I going to have automatic love and compassion for that country, that group? No, I'm going to be fearful. But if I break the habit, if I break that habit of have thought, feel fear, must be your fault, I break that habit pattern with have fear. Where does fear live? Oh, right now I feel my chest really tightening. I pause. I take a breath in. I take a breath out. My chest is still pretty tight, but it lessened a little bit. Let me do it again. I'm now distracting the mind story. I'm distracting that bully in the brain, that stress story, and I get to see things for what they really are. That's the resilience piece that comes in. That's why 2 decades ago, I had a major tragedy, and the resilience piece has come through me, and I've spoken on it extensively on how I was able to get through that time and not just survive, but flourish. It's because I was able to separate the tragedy from the barista who didn't give me my coffee the right way. So that's why I didn't go off on her. That's why I didn't give the finger or really have road rage, because I was able to see I'm not mad at that. I'm actually really hurt because someone that I love is no longer here. I'm really fearful that my husband just lost his job. Fill in the blank for whatever the fear of the day is for you. So I'm not mad at that group of people as much as I'm really feeling strong emotion, and I can see it with a clear sense through the benefits of practice. It's not magic. It's one of the scientifically proven side effects of when I develop this awesome part of my brain called executive functioning. We're going to get into that in just a little bit. So we're going to do a short, small practice. We're going to do an awareness practice, and this is mindfulness. However, for some reason, mindfulness, even in my own mind, kind of conjures up like a really academic, heavy, weighty, oh no, I can't practice mindfulness. It seems like it's really hard. I don't want to. But if I say, can you be aware of your thumbnail right there? Can you just do that? Can you be aware of what that feels like? Yeah, I could be aware of what that feels like. Okay, do me a favor and just take your pointer finger and go just tap your thumb on your right hand with your left hand. Can you be aware of that? Yeah. So we're going to add those tiny little practices of awareness and infuse them with mindful awareness, meaning that we're curious and we're kind, and we're kind of adding this other element of wonder into it, as if it's the first time that you've ever done it and it's the coolest thing that anyone's ever taught you to do. And all I'm asking you to do is take your pointer finger and tap on your thumbnail on your other hand. A seemingly total futile exercise, but it works. So in a comfortable seated position, if you're standing, that's okay too. Just try and stay still for just a moment. This way the mind story doesn't kick up with movement and balancing things. Just sit or stand. I'm bringing my eyes down, what I call the neutral gaze, and I ask that you do that too. So that means bringing your eyes down to the floor. If you're listening to this while you're driving, please just continue to be safe operating your vehicle. For everyone else, bring eyes down towards the floor, down towards your lap, keeping them open. Please don't close them. And now breathe in and open your palms wide. Breathe in, opening palms wide. And breathe out, just letting them go neutral, letting your palms relax. Breathing in, closing palms and clenching them like a fist, but keeping your arms relaxed on your lap. And breathe out, open your hands and release. On the inhale, you're squeezing your palms together. And on the exhale, you are releasing. Do that about 10 times on your own rhythm. Breathing in, squeeze. Feeling your palms, feeling the weight, feeling your fingers, feeling the nails maybe touching the palm of the skin, feeling the wrist, the forearm tighten. Exhale, release, wiggle fingers. See if they feel achy or numb. Noticing the breath, breathing in, squeeze. Using the mouth to exhale, breathing out, release. About 3 more. Last one. Exhale all that air out. Give your hands a wiggle, a shake. Bring eyes up to meet the screen or others in the room, looking around the space where you dwell as if it's the first time that you've ever been there. And I'm just going to ask, was that easy or was it hard? And you can just chat. Was that easy or was it hard? Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard, sometimes parts of it are easy, sometimes parts of it are hard. We go in and out. That's mindfulness practice. That's it. Being aware of what's happening in my inside world, being aware of my breath. As I notice what's happening in my outside world, as I notice my clenched fists, and then I open them again. And if we replace our normal stress reaction with something like one breath. No one will even know you're doing this, by the way. And this is one of my tricks when I'm in a conflict conversation. I teach communication for conflict as part of my mindful communication course. And if someone is saying something that's bringing out a lot of emotion in me, and I really have this urge to just tell them they're wrong, convince them that I'm right. Of course, that's what we always want to do, right? Tell them all the places that their idea is going to send us in the wrong direction. Before I say anything, while I'm listening to them, I'm breathing in and I'm squeezing my hands. I'm breathing out and I'm releasing them. You don't even know that I'm doing it if you're the person that I'm in a conflict communication with. You won't even know. I'm breathing in, I'm squeezing my palms, and I'm just looking at you and smiling and nodding, and I'm breathing out. And when I do that, I have shifted the mind story of stress and I need to tell this person off. And I've brought it back into the body and back into something that's happening in the present moment. And when you do that, you disrupt your stress response of yell, scream, storm off, punch, all of those things that happen when we get really agitated. And you're able to actually access a part of the brain called the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is where our memories and information are stored. It's like the librarian of your brain. And when you're able to access information, when you're in a conflict communication, guess what? You appear to be the smartest person in the room. Because when people get agitated and very fearful and very angry, we are shut off from the parts of our brain that have all of our logic, our rationale, and our understanding, all of our information. So when you're able to be in a heated debate with someone and maintain your sense of composure because you're breathing in and squeezing your right hand in your pocket, no one even knows, right? You're breathing out. Your focus is not 100% on the stress story, but it's distracted with this physical sensation of squeeze hand, release. Also, I take my tongue and I place it at the roof of my mouth right where the gums join the teeth. If I can't squeeze hands, looks like this. You don't even know that I'm doing it. That also helps me to keep my mouth shut for a little while and just listen until I have my opportunity to speak. If I have my opportunity to speak, by the time that comes, I might choose to say, okay, agree to disagree and walk away, right? But when we do these skillful distractions, you're able to access parts of your brain that hold logic, reasoning, and information. So you appear to be extremely controlled. You appear to be extremely intelligent. And we may be, but it's really that you're able to manage your emotions even when there's a storm of emotion coming at you from someone else. This is awareness plus connection, and neuroplasticity equals transformation. That's what we're speaking of. The awareness is the mindfulness piece. The connection is to the present moment, what's happening on your inside world. I'm getting stressed. I need to go back to breathing and squeezing my hands, or placing my tongue at the top. And the neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to change. So the same way that if I exercised every single day, if I went and ran 5 miles every day, my muscles would change, my cardiovascular health would improve. Same thing with our neurological systems. Neuroplasticity is what it's called, and it's an absolute game changer to understand that our brain can change for the better. We can teach an old dog new tricks. That is a big lie that we cannot, and that we get old and we just have to stay hardwired with these patterns. That's just absolutely a lie and not true. And if we believe in this information, it changes your whole life, because it means that people go from saying, well, yeah, I'm not patient because my mom wasn't patient, so I'm a yeller. That's it. Part of that is true in that I was raised in a yelling type household, so I developed habits based upon what I was exposed to and what was modeled to me. So I have to untrain. However, to say that I am just angry because my dad was angry, that's just not true. To say that I have to have these hardwired patterns and there's nothing I can do about them, that's just not true through neuroplasticity. Dr. Judson Brewer is one of my teachers. He's a psychiatrist and does a lot of mindfulness research. So why is awareness so hard? He has spent the last decade studying mindfulness and its connection to habit breaking. And he's discovered that even the most intelligent and trained minds will, absolutely will, not if, when, will daydream after just a couple of moments. It's called default mode network, and it's not for this workshop, but we go into this thing called default mode network 80% of the day. So for 80% of the day, we go into robot mode. Everyone's had the experience of driving somewhere and you had no recollection of getting there, but you arrived there and you think, oh, wow, I'm here, and you're safe, and your car didn't drive itself, you drove it, but you have no recollection of the entire trip because the whole time we were disconnected from what our physical was doing and we were in mind story. This is called the default mode, and we go into it about 80% of the day. Mindfulness practice helps us notice when we're in default mode, helps us recognize where we got stuck, where we get trapped, and brings us back to the present moment. And again, that's why people that practice mindfulness seem to have this magical quality that we're calm all the time. It's not true. It's just I notice when I'm agitated. I notice when I'm stressed, when I'm angry, when I'm fearful. I check in, and I do have the ability to bring my attention back because I'm trained the same way an Olympian trains in their sport of choice. I'm trained in neuroplasticity and mindfulness practice. So that's why it seems like mindfulness could be a silver bullet to cure everything that ails you, because it helps with a lot of stuff. This is the positive negative reinforcement of why habits get formed. Really brief. We have a trigger. I spoke about it earlier with I feel stressed. I saw something on the news during COVID. I was watching one of the updates, the state updates on the numbers. And I watched it, and I'm telling you that was a true example. My body was in my pantry, and I had already swallowed 2 or 3 cookies, and I had no awareness of it. It's as if someone, an alien came, picked me up from the television, placed me, and food down the gullet. It happened that fast. And as I noticed the chewing and the dryness, that's what brought me out of that habit, that thing that happens, trigger, behavior, reward, habit. See food, eat food, feel good, repeat. See happy, indulge in. Pharmaceutical companies are really good at this advertising gimmick. When we watch those commercials, it's never people that are sad or that aren't happy looking. It's always very attractive, affluent, happy people. So that makes me think on a neurological level, oh, I want that. I want whatever they're taking and having. What can you give me to have their life? They look like they have it all together, right? And it takes a trained mind, an examined mind, to realize they just want me to buy their thing. I'm not going to turn into them. I'm still going to be exactly who I am right now. I'll just have whatever that product is. Could be the car, the new coat, the pocketbook. The luxury industry is perfect for this. Why would you pay $5 for a pair of sneakers when we can sell you one for $5,000? Because then you're going to look like this person in the ad. You're not. You're still going to be you with $5,000 less in your account and those shoes, right? Do it or not do it. I'm just saying have awareness so you're not a robot. And that's what mindfulness does. See affluence, buy thing that affluent people seem to have, and repeat. So this is how mindfulness changes your brain. The amygdala is our fear center. Just for the purposes of keeping this brief, the amygdala basically goes around all day and saying, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? It scans your environment for danger to your existence. That's the amygdala. The hippocampus, we could also call the hippocampus the librarian of the brain. This is where all of your memories are stored. Other parts of the brain come into play here too, but the hippocampus is responsible for memory. When we have traumatic brain injury, if memory is compromised, it's the hippocampus that probably has taken the biggest brunt of the injury. This is the part of the brain that's more active and has more gray matter density following mindfulness training. So we've hooked people up to MRIs and EEGs and EKGs, and we've studied their brains before and after mindfulness training. And one of the most amazing things that we see is that the amygdala actually shrinks. It gets less activity. So we're aware of things that could cause us harm, like a train going past us, but we don't operate from a fear-based place all throughout the day when there isn't a fear thing in front of us. The prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus actually gain more activity after mindfulness practice, which is why we practice mindfulness, because in a stress response, you are in the amygdala part of your brain, and we need to bring the other parts of our brain online. The stress response shuts off parts of your brain that are responsible for logic, compassion, empathy, because the amygdala only has one thing concerned: get you the hell out of Dodge, fight, flight, or freeze. You're either going to fight something or someone or yourself. You're going to freeze and play dead. And we've had this happen when we've been really stressed, that we just kind of dead in the eyes. We just kind of shut down. Or we're going to get the hell out of there. So fight, flight, or freeze. That's the amygdala. The prefrontal cortex, however, is this amazing part of the brain that comes online when we practice mindfulness. So just before, when you breathed in and squeezed and you breathed out and released, you activated the prefrontal cortex and you calmed the amygdala down a bit. And that's why, again, people that practice mindfulness seem to have a magical quality. When conflict hits, if I'm all in the amygdala brain, if I'm all fear-based, I'm approaching the world from a place of, you're trying to kill me and I need to do everything I can to have you not. That might make sense why people react the way they do in conflict. That'll make you feel a little bit better. It's not you. They're all in the fear brain. But if we're able to take a breath and pause and just separate a little bit, we go into the prefrontal cortex, and now I can access my hippocampus. I can access my memories. I can realize I'm nowhere near a train. I don't need to be fearful of anything. There's no pterodactyl here. There's no woolly mammoth that's going to stomp on me. This is just a person who's really passionate about their political view. This is just a person. I don't need to be afraid of them. This is just emotion that's coming up, right? It's just a little anger that I'm feeling. I don't need to be afraid for my existence. I just need to take a breath and settle it a little bit and see where I can go from there. What happens when I stop forcing the stopping of the habit, the stopping of craving, and I just witness with a sense of curiosity? So what I'm going to ask, it's a little bit of homework. The next time you feel stressed, it might be right now as you're listening to this workshop, there might be something going on that's having you be a little stressed out, right? The next time you feel stressed, I'm asking that you actually notice, what is your reaction? Do you reach for that cigarette? And if you do, I'm actually asking you to let the habit play out with awareness. If you reach for the cookie, as I did, I'm a nail biter. So I'm a mindful nail biter. I realize now that I do this, and I don't even realize it until I hear the click. When I hear the click of my mouth on my nail from my mindfulness practice, that's my trigger to take my hand out and take a breath and realize, what am I telling myself up here? What stress story is playing out? Years ago, I used to bite the whole nail down. I wouldn't even have a chance of coming out of that trance until the whole nail was bitten down. Now it's like the first bite. I hear the click and I take my hand out and say, oh, check in. What's happening up here? What are you ruminating? What are you proliferating? One of the people that did this, mindful smoking, she realized that it smells like stinky cheese. That every time she took a drag, we asked her to pay attention when you take that drag. Taste it. Feel it on your lips. Smell it. Actually be present when you're doing whatever that thing is, and see if that won't disrupt the habit all into itself. And it does. It did. So I'm asking, the next time you get stressed, the next time your child does something that makes you have this immediate reactionary habit that pops up to grab or to yell, continue with that, but continue with it with a sense of awareness. Notice what's happening in the chest. Are you all tight? Are you all clenched up? Have a connection to what's happening as it's happening, and that is going to disrupt the habit. Because again, I mentioned it earlier, whether you do the thing or don't do the thing, that's not for me to judge. But at least you'll start to go through life as someone who's in control of your behavior. Will go through life in control, empowered, able to choose if I'm going to yell or not yell. You might choose to yell anyway, but at least it wasn't from a place of reactionary behavior, as if you're a slave to every whim that comes up in your mind, right? That's just not thriving. That's the opposite of flourishing. Thought comes in and I'm just a slave. I have to do the whole thing. The next time you lose your temper or get stressed, notice. These are the questions of inquiry. What do you feel like when you yell? What do you feel like? What's happening inside here? How tight do you get and where do you get tight? What do you notice physically when you feel stressed? How do you know when you're stressed? When you say out loud to a friend, to a best friend, I'm so stressed. How do you know? What's happening physically to let you know, have that thought, I'm stressed? Where do you feel open? Where do you feel tight? Stress and anger, they're heavily a tightening, a contraction. Calmness, peace, inner stillness, that's a loosening. I think of it as a flower blooming. When we're taking that breath, it's like the flower just blooms right open. Where do you feel weight? Where do you feel pressure on your body? Check in with your jaw. Is it tight or clenched? Can you open your mouth just slightly? Do this activity as I'm speaking, actually. Just open the jaw just a little bit. Kind of shift it left, shift it right. So subtle that someone that was in front of you wouldn't even really notice that you're doing it. It's not a big exaggerated movement. It's just a tiny, tiny open, separate lips, shift jaw left and right. Loosen it up a little bit. Take a breath. We could be holding tightness here. We might be walking around all day like this and not even realizing it. Just taking a moment and letting those shoulders come down, actively bringing them all the way up, and then intentionally bringing them down. Seeing where we hold our stress is a really important part of this line of inquiry of breaking this habit. Sustaining a connection to awareness. This is me and my then 6-year-old son out surfing. That's something that brings me joy, doing fun activities with my children. I get back to liking them as human beings. I can say that with all honesty. They get back to liking me as a human, not just looking at me as a disciplinarian that just tells them no all the time. This is where corporate retreats have kind of gone wrong. The whole point of the corporate retreat was to build camaraderie and to have this sense of bonding and connection with coworkers. If they don't make it fun and actually ask what makes your boat float, they're missing the boat on that. So we cultivate a state of happiness through connection, through mindfulness practice, by knowing what makes you tick. Check in and know what actually serves you. You're the only one that could know this. And disrupt your stress response with something that serves you, serves your today and serves your tomorrow. Again, the immediate gratification of that slide that I showed you of all the cell phone, the immediate gratification of looking at social media, really quick scrolling, those are immediate, but they're not long serving. Mindfulness is something that serves. Exercise is something that serves, right? Taking an intentional breath, that's something that serves your today and your tomorrow. And this is an important one, really coming to a close for the workshop, but one of the key ways that you can change right now, that you can notice where you're at, notice that you're perfect exactly the way you are in this moment, and that there might be some things that we can tweak and shift. So we're not looking for a huge transformation here. We're looking for just one thing that's going to shift the way you manage your stress response. Speak to yourself the way you speak to your best friend. I like to say this because I have a lot of real solid humans in my life. And when I have something going on, no matter if I'm wrong or right, they will listen to me. And at the end, they'll say something like, I'm sorry that you're suffering. Whether they agree or disagree is totally irrelevant. They'll listen And they'll say something like, I just wish I could take it away for you. Something like that. Speak to yourself with that same type of kindness. The next time you notice that stress response, notice you go to guilt, shame, I should have, I suck at, why am I here again? Notice if you do this, beat yourself up as if you are responsible for changing the globe right here in this moment, and shift it a little bit by first taking a breath, noticing where do you feel your tightness in your body when you're going through that stress story. Take a breath, shift the story to something that's happening in the present moment, like clenching fists, relaxing fists, right? Figure out what makes you tick, and right there you are disrupting the stress reaction, which means you'll be stressed less often, less frequently. You'll notice when stress is popping up, and you'll have the ability, at maybe at a scale of 1 to 10, you'll notice at like a 3 or a 4, oh, I went like that, before it becomes, I need to pop 3 pills to get through the night, right? We notice these trajectories. Stress doesn't happen most of the time unless it's a survival response. Stress doesn't happen in this big overflowing emotion in one. It's a gradual. It's actually these little things that tear us down all throughout the day that create an overall depression or stress response. It's not one big event usually. It's this slow ride of stress. If we can disrupt that slow ride and notice and disrupt it by some of the things that I see written here, it changes the whole dynamic in relation. It connects you to the present moment, not just the stress story. It connects you to the present moment in a positive way. It's a game changer. Infuse mindfulness practice into daily activities. Small moments of mindfulness strung together, practice daily over time to live your mindful life. So we're going to finish off the workshop with just one last practice. This is called body awareness. We're going to take a seated position if you can. If a seated position isn't available for you, that's okay. Stay standing. Again, if you're driving, you're going to do hands on steering wheel is going to be your whole practice. Breathing in, hands on steering wheel. If you're in a comfortable seated position, bring attention downward towards your feet. So think of a tree in the storm. Stress is all up top, leaves blowing. That's where all the stress lives. Think of that as being up here. This is the top of our tree. These are the leaves. This is the storm up here. We need to get to the grounded roots. Go to your feet. Go to the lower half of that body. That's the trunk. Those are the roots. Bring attention to your feet. Wiggle toes if that helps you. Bring eyes down towards that neutral gaze. Breathe in, feeling your toes wiggling. Breathe out. 3 more just like that. Breathing in, wiggle those toes. Breathing out, let them relax. Bringing attention and awareness to that lower part of the body, your legs, the trunk of your tree, your feet. Breathing in, feeling feet in whatever they're making connection with. Maybe it's your shoes, maybe it's the hard floor, maybe you're barefoot, whatever it is for you. Breathing out. 1 more. Breathing in. Breathing out, seeing if you can maybe even conjure up a little smile as you wiggle your toes. Bring eyes up to meet others in the room or reacquaint yourself with your environment. My name is Angie Harris. I'm a certified mindfulness instructor. All of these techniques are things that you can do right away. I do encourage you to only pick one and stick with it for the rest of this evening and into tomorrow. Small degrees of change create huge transformations over time. If we try and adopt 10 or 11 things all at once, we tend to drop all of them and not pay attention to any of them. So just do one. Notice when you're stressed. That's the one that I'm imploring you to choose. Notice. Continue with your normal stress reaction and check into what it really feels like to yell. Inhale those 3 cookies, bite your nail, go for the bottle, whatever it may be, without judgment, without judging yourself. We're doing this as a practice and just noticing. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.